Hello, what's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. So in today's video, on this lovely little Vauxhall Vivaro campervan conversion that we're currently cracking on with, I'm going to be swapping out the front seats in the Vauxhall Vivaro, removing the single driver's seat and the double passenger seat, and I'm going to be fitting in some Mazda RX8 cream leather seats in its place. As you can see, this is one of the seats. The other passenger seat is currently in the house in storage at the moment. But first things first, I'm going to be getting the driver's seat mounted on just to make sure that it's okay to mount them onto the actual seat bases themselves. But before I start swapping any of the seats over at all, what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to undo the driver's seat base and make sure that this base does actually mount on the passenger side as well. I'm presuming it does because all the other previous van conversions that I've done in transporters and Fords and things like that, generally the driver's base would normally have a single similar sort of mounting on the passenger side as well. And if it does, then that means that I can go out, I can get another driver's seat base, because it's much easier, they're much more common to find the single seat bases than a single passenger base itself. So as I say, if the driver's single seat base mounts perfectly fine on the passenger side, we'll go out, we'll get another base for it as well, and then we'll be able to get these cream leather Mazda RX8 seats mounted in, and the passenger seat will then also get mounted to a swivel base as well, so it will then be able to twist around and face into the rear of the conversion. It should be hopefully relatively simple and straightforward swap over. These seats do also have some electrics in the driver's seat. I think the passenger is fully manual apart from the heated mechanism, but the driver's seat does have electric forwards and backwards as well as heated as well. So I will be getting some power down to where the seat area is going to be, and that'll get wired into a relay so the seats can be fully adjusted while the ignition is on the vehicle. And then, as I say, the passenger side, once that's in place, that will just need an additional wire putting through for the heated mechanism if I want to do that. So by the end of this video we should have the seats fully out, fully removed, and we should have some nice freshly installed Mazda RX8 cream leather seats, all wired up for the electrics as well as for the heated seat mechanisms as well. So let's get some safety gear out, some tools out, let's get cracked on. As I said, double check to make sure that the single base does mount on the passenger side as well, and if it does, we'll get all the seats removed and we'll get these new seats fitted in. Right, so now we have the original seats out and I've got the driver's seat off the original base, as you can see down there as well. It's now time to start prepping the Mazda RX8 seats, ready to then get mounted onto the original bases. So to prep the seats, we need to basically hammer flat or cut off anything that's protruding along this main flat rail that the seats are built onto. So things like this little bracket here, that's going to get ground off. We have little prongs here, they either get hammered back through or ground off and cut off as well. Same with this little back mounting mechanism as well. We want to get this back down to as flat a rail as possible, and then it'll make it a hell of a lot easier and simpler to get it mounted onto the original Vivaro base. Once the rails are flat, I'll also be able to start wiring in some of the electrics just to give the seat a test, because I haven't even tested any of the electronics in this seat. I was told it was all working, there's no real reason why it shouldn't be working, but I'm still going to test it all before putting the final mounting in place, before I'm getting it all mounted back in the van. So we'll get the chair flipped over on top of this little workbench that I've got, that I'm just working on top of, just to try and protect the leather, things like that. We'll get the grinder out, we'll get some tools out, and as I say, we'll get all of these little bits cut off or ground back or anything like that, and get this all the way down to a flat rail, and then we'll look to get it mounted onto the base. So let's get this chair flipped over and get the rails fully flat. So now all the rails are flat, I have now just wired in the seat mechanisms just to make sure that both A, the seat actually works, and then B, so I can actually move the rails backwards and forwards so I can get all of the bolts through the mounting holes and to be able to get them mounted onto the base itself. Now wiring wise for the RX8 seats, it's very simple. Generally you've got one main connector plug. That's the plug that's I've been disconnected from underneath. That comes off this one main wiring harness. And under the wiring harness itself, if you're going to be fitting any RX8 seats or anything like that, for the positive side, for the seat motion, you've got a solid grey cable and a yellow with a red stripe. And on the negative side, you have a white cable with a yellow stripe and a solid purple. I've also got this blue one separate as well, because that one is for the heated seat mechanism. So if I do want heated seats wired up, I'll just put that to an illuminated switch that would then get mounted into the seat base, so then the heated seats can also get turned on and off as well. But as you can see, I've got a cable wired in, and that's just going across to a battery that I've got there for testing, and that's going to be one of the batteries going into this conversions as well. And as we see here, the rails are moving forwards and backwards fine, as well as the backrest as well, that's going up and down. So it shows that both the all of the seat electrics are all working fine, and it also means I can now just, as I say, slowly adjust the rails itself, moving them backwards and forwards so I can get them lined up on the base. So now I know the electrics are working and I've got them wired up so I can move the rails backwards and forwards. Let's get it all lined up on the base and get it secured onto the base, and then we'll be able to get it all mounted in place. But it's coming along, so let's get this base in place. Right, so there's the seat now mounted to the base, and I managed to use a lot of the original mounting holes from the base all the way down one side as well. All of the holes lined up perfectly with original holes in the seats, and to make sure that that bolt for the motor itself wasn't going to be interfering, I've just drilled a little hole all the way around it just so it actually sits flush and flat. Then I've just put a couple of little extending bars going across so the other side can get fully secured in as well, and again they are fully secured down with 8mm bolts and lock-in washers as well, so they aren't going anywhere at all. So now the seat is in, I've tested all the electrics, things like that. We'll just now get it mounted back into the actual van itself, get the electrics connected up to the battery, and then we'll finally be able to get the van back on the road and be able to drive it again with the seat back in a driver's position. So let's get this mounted back in and see what it looks like. Right, so we've got the driver's seat now in place, and I've fed a nice chunky 30 amp cable going from the battery, and the battery in these vans sits just in front of the passenger seat rather than under the bonnet or anything like that. So I've got a cable that's going to be fed through underneath the rubber matting, and that's going underneath the chair. It's all wired in, so if I just do the controls, you can see the seat is nicely going forwards, going backwards. The backrest goes back and forwards as well. All of the lumbar support and stuff like that in the back seat is working as well. So that is now the driver's seat fully in place, fully working, all wired in as well. The only thing I've got to wire in is the heated mechanism, but I'm going to put that on a separate switch just so you can't accidentally walk away and leave the heated seats running. But as I said, they've gone in quite nicely. I've just got to get the clips put back on for the switches, but other than that, that is the driver's seat fully in, fully working. I did have to do a couple of amendments as well. I've had to swap over the seatbelt buckle because the seatbelt from the Vivaro did not click into the Mazda. A lot of the time they are quite universal, but this one wasn't. But thankfully it was relatively a straight swap just by grinding off a couple of little clips, and then I've got the original driver's seatbelt in place of the Mazda one. Other than that, as I say, pretty much a straightforward swap, other than having to create some little extender bars just to mount it onto the base. Now hopefully the passenger side is going to be a lot quicker and simpler because there's no electronics apart from the heated mechanism on the passenger side. Movement wise, the passenger side is all completely manual with the usual bars underneath the seat, things like that. So let's rinse and repeat in regards to getting all of the lugs and things ground off the bottom of the passenger seat, and then we'll get the passenger seat mounted in and see what it looks like when both Mazda RX8 seats are mounted in this little Vivaro. Right guys, so now the driver's seat's in. It's actually a few weeks later, but I've now managed to be able to source a second driver's single seat base that's going to be mounted in the passenger side. I've also got a brand new swivel plate for the base itself, and that will allow the seat to twist all the way around. But as you can see, the conversion's actually been cracking on in the meantime while I've been trying to source a decent priced seat base and waiting for the swivel to come along. So there's going to be plenty more videos to be coming, as you can see, but as I say, now we're going to be getting the passenger seat mounted on. First of all, we're going to get the swivel base mounted onto the base. Then obviously the seat's then going to get mounted onto the swivel itself. Because this is a base that's made specifically for the TVPs, the Traffic Vivaro Primastar models, it should just bolt directly to the base itself without any sort of modification. And then just like I did with the driver's seat, if that needs a little bit of mods just to get that mounted onto the swivel, we'll do that. It'll probably need it, similar to what the driver's seat needed, but it didn't take much. So let's get cracked on, get the swivel out, mount it onto the base. And this base can also get mounted in a few different places. If we peel this up, all of these little black marks are potential mounting holes, just like that one. And this base lines up with that particular hole, so we're going to have to just take that tape off and just reveal the hole and cover that one up. And drill a little hole in there as well for the little stands to go through. So a couple of daft little jobs to do as well. But by the end of the video, we'll have two fully fitted Mazda RX8 seats. So let's get cracked on and get this passenger seat fully fitted in.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
So before we can mount the passenger seat onto the base and the swivel base, we've got to make sure that the rails are just as flat as we did with the driver's side. So that just means getting in between the rail and all of these lugs with a grinder disc, just making sure that they're all cut off and the rail itself is as flat as possible. But thankfully the passenger side is all manual compared to the driver's side that has electrics for the movement as well. So I don't have to worry about any electrics for this. The only electrics on the seat is basically for the airbag, which is going to be left disconnected, and for the heating mechanism, because this does actually have heated seats on both the drivers and the passengers in the Mazda RX8. But other than that, as I say, movement wise, you've got the old bar for the forwards and backwards, and you've got the old lever on the side for the backrest. So a lot less messing about on this one. It's just a case of making sure that the rails are as flat as possible so they can then mount nice and flush on the swivel base as well. So I've got the grinder out, I've got some discs ready, so let's get these all cut down and flat and get the rails completely flat and mounted onto the base. Right, so there we go guys, that's the passenger seat now fitted in, as well as the drivers that I did earlier on in the video. The passenger seat is fitted and mounted onto the brand new Vivaro specific swivel base that I ordered from Clear Cut Conversions. And if you're after any of the bits that I've used in this video, whether that's the swivel base, the Mazda RX8 seats, additional single driver's base, anything like that, check the links in the description beneath the video, and that'll go up to eBay, where I bought pretty much most of the items that are going into this conversion itself. So with the seat fully fitted now, as I say, there's no electrics on the passenger side. This is just all a manual. So you've got your little lever there for your backrest forwards and backwards, and you've got your little lever under there for your forwards and backwards for the seat itself. For the swivel itself, there's just a little lever here, pull the lever and that just frees the seat, and as you can see the seat freely swivels all the way around. It's not catching on anything, and there we go, that's now facing the interior of the conversion, and as you can see it just swivels straight back in place as well, so it's not catching on anything, and it locks straight back into place as well. And then just to unlatch it again, as I say, it's just that little lever and it freely swivels back round again. So there we go, that's how I've fitted some leather Mazda RX8 seats into this Vauxhall Vivaro. As I say, the driver's seat is fully wired up for the electrics for the motion. The passenger side is fully mounted onto the swivel base as well. I didn't see the point in mounting the swivel base on the driver's side because obviously with the bed that's in there you won't actually be able to twist the seat round, it's just going to start knocking into the bed itself. But with the passenger seat being able to flip around, it does mean that you can just sit there and just basically put your feet up and look into the conversion side of the van. So I hope you found this video useful. I've also fitted these seats in some previous other vans as well, in a couple of T4s, T5s, things like that. So if you're after some similar sort of seats and you want to see how they're fitted in different types of vans, have a look through my channel. There's loads of different seat fitting videos in loads of different vans that I've converted over the past few years. If you found the video useful, consider giving it a good old thumbs up, and if you're new to the channel, consider hitting that subscribe button, because we're going to be doing week by week videos as we're progressing along on this conversion of this little Vauxhall Vivaro campervan. So I hope you found the video useful or informative. If you did, as I say, consider giving it a thumbs up, and hopefully I'll see you on next week's episode of this Vauxhall Vivaro campervan conversion as we're going along with its progress. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week. Cheers.
It sound right, boys.